views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to Bronx Talk. The terror bombings in Chelsea and New Jersey have renewed New Yorkers' fears. With our crowded streets, buildings, homes, and attractive shopping and entertainment locations, it seems so random. Anyone could be a target or even a victim. On the other hand, in just over 40 hours, the suspect was caught. So how safe are we? That's a big question that we're going to ask our guests tonight. Also, we'll attack a few other burning police and local criminal justice issues. Why did the City Council not pass the Right to Know Act? What are the prospects for the ongoing plan to keep officers' disciplinary records secret? And what about the new police commissioner? How will he differ from Bill Bratton? All that and more on our table tonight. And if you have questions or comments, send an email to us at bronxtalk@bronxnet.org or post them on our Facebook page, and we'll read them on the air during a future edition of our program. For the here and now, the chair of the City Council's Public Safety Committee, Bronx Council member Vanessa Gibson, nice to have you with us again, and a retired NYPD captain who is currently a professor in the Monroe College School of Criminal Justice, Professor and Captain Tom Sia. Nice to have you, sir.
Thank you, Gary. It's a real honor.
Let's start with you, Captain. Let's talk a little bit about this very difficult couple of days we've had in New York City and frankly, nationally as well as a result. I really thought it was remarkable that within essentially 36 hours, NYPD identified and captured the suspect in the bombing. Now, I'm obviously a layman. I don't know how it works. Give us a little bit of what goes on internally when something like this happens. At what point does the FBI get involved? Are there other agencies involved? Does NYPD counterterrorism take over? The basic local precinct cops? Explain how this thing is mobilized, and I think it would be very instructive for the viewers.
Absolutely, Gary. We've learned a lot since 9/11. And if you read or have heard the 9/11 Commission report, part of the problems was that interagency coordination and communication. Now, the good news about the Chelsea bombings was the immediate arrest and apprehension. However, you saw the coordination, that response, that who showed up at that scene. You saw the windbreakers with alcohol, tobacco, firearms bureau, and explosives. FBI, NYPD uniform, the patrol services, NYPD counterterrorism, NYPD intelligence, local detectives. You had an array of the best law enforcement investigators there on a Saturday night.
And so let me just interject. So a call comes out, it hits 9/11, there's a bomb, and we'd like to think that the 9/11 lit up at that moment. Yeah. At that point, the call goes out and representatives from all those agencies are there.
No, the first response would
See, I'm right.
The first response would be the uniform component. People on patrol, your sector car, your community beat officers.
Council member knows.
They would be the first ones at the scene. Once they get there, saw the explosion, they're going to notify a supervisor, who's going to notify a captain or above and get the ball rolling. The notifications go out, and then you get the response of all the available resources we have, and we have a lot.
So then you're on the scene, and there are people from all these different agencies. Who's in charge? Is it the NYPD guy, or though you'd assume the federal guys are going to get involved pretty quickly?
At this scene, it would be the incident commander, which would most likely be someone from the NYPD, working hand in glove with someone from the federal law enforcement.
And now you're involved at Monroe College in training students and the whole educational aspect of training officers. That would presume that, let's say, a local NYPD precinct inspector is frankly capable of, number one, dealing with something as large as this, as well as coordinating all these other agencies who have their own agendas too.
Absolutely, Gary.
Wow,
He
I'm
would
impressed.
take the reins until the chief of department would show up, chief of patrol, chief of counterterrorism. Then they come in. Then they confer with the incident commander, witnesses, and everything else, and they come with a plan and a strategy.
At what point is the police commissioner involved, or is he really just fielding information and then kind of using that to, maybe add a command suggestion and coordinate that with the mayor and the public and everything else?
Well, he's always going to be apprised of the latest information, always get the immediate updates, and of course he's going to let the mayor know what's going on. So that's the police commissioner's role in that. If the police commissioner has to reach out to the head of the FBI or the head of ATF or other agencies, he'll do that also.
As far as the question that I raised in the beginning, and maybe there's no easy answer to it, it seems so random. We walk the streets of the Bronx and of Manhattan, and this is our home and this is our city, and we feel great, and we know that there are certain streets are crowded. One block in the middle of the city, something so violent and so horrible and so dangerous can happen. How safe are we? And frankly, it's a horrible question to ask in this day and age when there is so much hate in the world. Why don't we see this more often? Not like I want to see it, but one would think it seems, frankly, relatively easy to just, well, I'm going to do something horrible. What do you think?
Gary, that's a
Not
tough
an easy
question.
answer.
No, there is no easy answer. New York City is target rich for terrorists. Now, we quantify the targets as target hard, soft targets. 27th Street would be considered soft target. What's on 27th Street as compared to Times Square or Wall Street? Those places are target hard. You could see the police presence, you could see the cameras and everything else. Fortunately, in Manhattan, there were a lot of cameras on those blocks, which helped in the investigation. But we cannot patrol every single block at every single hour and every single day of the city.
Let's
We have to rely on the public.
Right.
That's our eyes and
That's a
ears.
large part of it. All right,
Absolutely.
the council member, it's interesting to me because I've known you obviously a long time, and you, I guess most recently, the last go-around became the chair of the Public Safety Committee. My sense from talking to you is that you've learned a lot about our services over the years. So what would be your response to your constituents and even here on television when we say, how safe are we?
I think we are absolutely safe, understanding
safe
that
as possible.
as safe as possible, and understanding that we are always going to be the #1 target for terrorists and those that want to inflict violence upon us in the city. Since our tenure under this new administration with Mayor Bill de Blasio, we have hired 1,300 police officers, more than we've hired since the David Dinkins administration. We have also expended more training, more technology, more communication in our subway system so that officers have the ability to communicate in times of emergency. And also we have created the Critical Response Command and SRG, Strategic Response Group, which are dedicated and skilled police officers that are trained in counterterrorism and intelligence. We have the best equipment, we have the best officers. So it's important that the public understands that we are absolutely safe, but we want them to be absolutely aware of their surroundings. If you see suspicious packages or someone that's engaging in suspicious behavior, please call the authorities. I mean, we know that we are always under constant threat. And so while this area was not one that would be deemed as a high-level threat, like Times Square or Penn Station, but still something happened. And so we wanted to make sure that people are responding and they're calling the authorities when they see something. I am very impressed. I can't believe this individual was caught so quickly under our new commissioner. This is amazing. I mean, the partnership with the NYPD and FBI and state officials was really incredible in this instance.
Well, let's go back to the police captain. Why was this? Was this resolved so quickly? It seemed in the middle of the day today. We all gotten the alert this morning, which was frankly, which is a new innovation that we all, our phones all lit up. I think it was about 7:50 this morning. So that was like, wow. But then I was just doing my normal work day, and then at like whatever it was, at 10 o'clock, I heard somebody in the office had the radio, and I said, wow, did they catch the guy? They said, yes. I couldn't believe it.
Yes.
Why do you think this one turned around so
Gary, a
quickly?
big,
And let's not presume he's a suspect at this point, and of course the legal system will take
Gary,
run its
a
course.
big key to this investigation was the amount of evidence that was recovered from the scene. Now you have a bomb unit, you have ATF. They're experts at what to look for. And that device that didn't go off on 27th Street, that was solid gold as far as investigative tools. They learned a lot from that. They got a lot of leads from that. Now, go back to the 93 Trade Center bombing,
Right.
the first one. Excuse me. The key to that case was a partial VIN, vehicle identification number, from the rental van. A New York City detective found that in the rubble, traced it back to a rental, Hertz, I believe, in New Jersey. The person that drove the van went to get his deposit back to say his van was stolen. They apprehended him there in 93. Now, what do we learn from that? Terrorism can be treated not as a militarily, but as a law enforcement, because they solved that relatively quick. So we looked at that as like, hey, the FBI, the NYPD, they can handle this.
I thought it was very interesting and, of course, logical. I mean, those of us who are not in the criminal justice field might not have thought of it, but once they found the phone that allegedly was used to help detonate the bomb that didn't go off, they were able to trace that back to the store where it was purchased. They know exactly when it was purchased, and that, I guess, helps to begin the process.
Investigation.
Councilmember, civil libertarians were very concerned when it was notified or it was put out that we were going to have cameras all over the city. And I think in the beginning, and frankly, I was, and many people were very concerned and said, who are you really watching?
Right.
It seems to me this is an indispensable crime-fighting tool right now,
Right.
because, I mean, the guy's picture was, allegedly he was watching TV in a bodega or in a gas station today. Undoubtedly, he saw his own picture right there on TV. Just your thoughts about the network of cameras that we
Right.
have.
I think, cameras are an important public safety tool. They provide a sense of security for residents and New Yorkers, and also they're a piece of evidence for law enforcement to capture crime. I'm a fan of cameras. I put a lot of them in public housing and in major corridors in the district because people want it. People want to see cameras because they want to feel safe. While that does not replace a body, it does not replace a police officer, I think it's an added component in the overall conversation of public safety.
Let's talk a little bit more about, I almost said viewers, but the general public. And you raised the point. In this case, I guess the second device that was found, it was found by a woman, any one of us, walking
pressure
down the
cooker?
block. I got to tell you, I might have called, but I would have. It sounded to me like she hung around too long. If I saw something like that, I'd have called, but I'd have run. It's vital, I guess, that people participate in that way. Right?
Absolutely, and then sometimes things may not seem out of the ordinary, but it's always better to be safe than sorry. It's always better to call and just say, there's a package, unattended, there's something suspicious that I see. A pressure cooker with wires and a cell phone and a plastic bag.
You gotta pick that up
It
right
sounds
away.
very unusual that it's left by itself. So I'm glad that resident did call the authorities because we don't know what, could have happened if it wasn't, discovered.
Captain, how difficult, maybe a bad question, how difficult is it to, create a bomb like this? I mean, we now see ridiculously media is putting out ingredients out there. This strikes me as being a bumbling sort of terrorist in that, one device didn't go off, the other one went off and frankly wasn't probably as effective as he wanted it to be. In other words, talk to me about what it takes from the criminal side to pull something like this off, heinously, like let's say at the Boston Marathon or whatever.
Right. Well, they can learn from the internet, but I disagree a little, Gary. I think the first bomb was pretty potent. I think we're very fortunate that only
It
29
just
or
turned
so
out that way.
people got injured. I think that was, if I read correctly or heard on the news, he had ball bearings and stuff in there, so that gives it a shotgun effect.
Right.
So these were pretty lethal devices.
And we
Now
were
the
just
second
fortunate
one,
in that case.
I don't know why it didn't go off. I heard a report on the news that two gentlemen saw a nice suitcase type of bag, and they took
I
the
thought that was
contents
a-
out and took the suitcase.
Maybe I got confused.
So maybe that
because there
disconnected
was
a wire.
Well, there was a robotic thing that took one of them apart as well.
In New York or New Jersey?
Oh, I guess
In
I
New
lost,
Jersey-
I lost track.
In
I'm
New
sorry.
Jersey, they had, well,
The
we had the robot
robotic one.
also, but in New Jersey they had one and it actually exploded.
Before we get on to some of those other issues I talked about, you talked to me beforehand or asked a question that you couldn't really answer. Why do you think, or do we have a sense of why 23rd Street or 27th Street, and why maybe a street in Elizabeth?
That's what I'm interested in, and we have to let the investigation unfold. I'm not going to speculate, but usually they like to pick a target to make a big splash. If you look in the past, the Boston
Yeah.
Marathon, 42nd Street, the car
Yeah,
bomb that
sure.
luckily didn't go off. That's a big splash.
So at this
so
moment,
this
you don't have an answer.
27th Street, I don't know what's on 27th Street. 23rd Street, okay, that's a busy street. Saturday night, I can understand that a little bit. But why 27th Street? What was his motive? What was he thinking? Why those blocks? Was it because the target was so soft there wasn't going to be a cop on that block? Like in Times
Right.
Square, where you have a vast amount of resources deployed
Hard
there?
to say. I speculated to you that in a way it's fortunate. It's always fortunate people live. It's fortunate that we now have this a suspect who they'll be able to interrogate and maybe get some answers. I wanted to add one thing for viewers. I heard in the news that, and I happen to know the location on 23rd Street, there is a Center for the Blind called Sellis Manor. And I was very concerned because you have many blind people there, and I was concerned. So I actually got a letter from the people at Visions that operate Sellis Manor, and I thought I would just issue this report because I hadn't heard it anywhere else. The places for people who are legally blind and low income, windows on the second, third, and fourth floor of the building were destroyed, and Vision's first floor office windows were cracked and damaged. At the time of the explosion on Saturday night, many blind tenants in the building were at a bingo game on the first floor run by the Tenants Association. Nobody in there, at least this letter doesn't document anybody getting hurt. It says there will be repairs for damages to Vision's windows in the office spaces, especially reapplying the non-glare film to the windows that they need for that facility. It'll also be necessary to offer additional meal service for the tenants while the street remains a crime scene, and limited access and trauma counseling for tenants requested. I thought it was important to put it out. Hadn't seen or heard it anywhere for people who are concerned, as we all must be, about the sight impaired people. That's the report. Council member, let's talk about the variety of issues that we talked about. Why do you think the Right to Know Act, the Speaker of the City Council saw the Right to Know Act and said, you know what? Let's let the police department handle it. This was an act that was going to require police officers to establish their own identity and exchange information with somebody that they stop and search. Many people were like, wait a minute, this was a good thing. Why did the council pass on it?
Right. So just a little bit of background. The Right to Know Act are two bills sponsored by Councilmember Richie Torres and Antonio Reynoso. And these are two bills that were left over from the Community Safety Act that was passed several years ago under Chris Quinn's administration. And these are two bills that focuses on individuals' right to not consent to a search, and also making sure that police officers identify themselves. If they stop someone, whether it results in an arrest or not, they would be required to give identification through a business card that would also include information on CCRB. A lot of support, broad support within the council, over 25 to 30 sponsors for both bills, a tremendous amount of advocacy from many advocates, civil rights organizations, NYCLU, and many others. We had a hearing over a year ago that was on a longer agenda of other police reform bills. And so I'm one of the sponsors on one of the bills, but not both. And these are issues that we've talked about for quite a bit when you talk about the police department and changing procedures and making sure that we really build and heal from a lot of the fractured relationships, particularly in communities of color. So coming to several months ago, I think the speaker had met with many advocates, talked to both sponsors and other members in the council, and came to a decision that we would allow the police department to do an administrative procedure where they would amend the patrol guide and they would also institute the identification through their own mechanism and not through the legislative process. These were two bills that were deemed controversial Former police commissioner William Bratton expressed his adamant opposition during my hearing as well as in the public, and Mayor de Blasio also expressed concerns about the legality of it, whether it would hold up in court. So all of that, I think the speaker, weighed all the options and really came to this decision thinking that this was something that could be implemented quickly and not go through the legislative process and possibly a veto by the mayor, and also something that we could have tangible results that we could evaluate.
Do you, and I hate to put it this way, but do you
Sure.
trust that the NYPD will aggressively enforce the policy of having a police officer give a business card to somebody? I mean, when there is the backing of legislative power,
Right.
then they are mandated to do it, and certainly if something goes wrong, I mean, you have that to
Absolutely.
hold. But in this case, if a police officer decides not to do it,
Right.
you're basically
Then where's the
trusting them.
accountability?
It's an old story to police themselves. And we're going to bring in the retired captain and ask what
Right.
he thinks. But,
Right.
So what's your
So
thought?
I'm always optimistic. I think now with the new change of leadership and having our Commissioner James O'Neill put forth his own agenda and his vision, we have an opportunity. I will say that the pieces of legislation remain in the Public Safety Committee. That has not changed. There's been no motion to discharge or remove the bills. They remain on the committee. And at any time, once this administrative procedure is implemented, the speaker, myself, and others can say, we're going to push the legislation. I think we had a fundamental difference. Commissioner Bratton didn't always agree with legislation. He always agreed in concept with what we tried to do, but the answer was always, this is a pilot, this is an initiative, we're doing it already. We at the council have a legislative responsibility to codify good measures and put them in law. And these are two bills that have a lot of support in the council as well as in the public, and putting it in local law is a recognition that it's a good measure, and also we want it to continue beyond our administration. We're all here under term limits, so we wanted to make sure that things last beyond us.
So I mean, I heard kind of both sides of the coin there. So it sounds like you're going to continue to monitor the situation.
Absolutely.
The legislation
Yes,
exists.
yes.
How does this affect policing? How would it have affected policing? And do you believe, as an officer who's been on the street, do you believe that police officers, in many cases, will abide by the new policy as opposed to regulation?
Yes, as a former policing commander, two sides. First of all, there is oversight, not only within the police department, there's a lot of oversight, and there's a lot of discipline administered. Secondly, there's an independent agency called the CCRB. So if they don't adhere to the patrol guide procedure, it could be considered maybe an abuse, and that would fall on the CCRB, so they can get recourse there. There is a tremendous amount of oversight. You have all 5 district attorneys. You have our own internal affairs. You have in each borough an inspections unit, okay? You have federal agencies.
You
that
know,
look for,
I-
we'll get
I
into corruption.
understand that,
Now, the
but-
other part, now, I'm gonna tell my cops to go out, reduce crime, make this community safe. And then the city council passes a law. I don't know what the punitive damages would be if they broke the law, and if they don't hand out a card, they're gonna get in trouble. So what's gonna go through the police officer's mind? Well, if I don't stop and question anyone, I don't have to hand out the card, I won't get in trouble. There goes your
So what you're
proactive.
saying that
They're gonna be overly cautious.
my reaction is just from what I've heard from sitting in this chair for almost 22 years, as a matter of fact, that people will say, you know what, the CCRB doesn't do anything. I got stopped the other day. I got harassed the other day. It doesn't matter how many times you try and make a complaint. It goes through a whole series of issues, and nobody ever, responds, or I feel like I never really get justice on my end, and frankly, we see protests all over the country over things like that.
But the whole issue, Gary, you probably remember this, if you go back a few years, CCRB was under the police department, and it was huge, vocal to get it independent of the police department. Now the city did that. But now you tell me they're not happy with
Are
that?
you in favor of releasing an officer's disciplinary records?
If it's the law, yes.
Well,
it's not the law.
boy, did he cop out there. Do you
Yes, I
think
am.
you are? So you think that is something
Absolutely.
they should
And I
push
think,
forward?
the department has been doing it all these years, and now somehow someone realized that state law prohibits it, and so now they want to follow it. So, I think at the end of the day, if we are ever going to have a city where we can rebuild and develop a trust in our police officers and have accountability and hold folks accountable for their actions, I think it's something that we have to really do.
The new police commissioner, lucky him on his first day, there were bombings in New York City. I mean, we're laughing, but offering him good luck and respect, of course. He allegedly is the inventor of community policing. Will there be a difference in the way police officers behave as a result of this new police commissioner in the long term? We expect it won't take a day, but it may take a little while. What's your thought?
I believe so. I think many of us that know Jimmy O'Neill when he was the CO of the 4-4 precinct or the 2-5 when he was in transit, he has a lengthy history of over 30 years serving. He's New York, raised, Brooklyn, and all of his different positions. I think he gets it. He's someone that you can talk to, someone that's a listener. He can build a coalition of residents and advocates and clergy. We generally like him. People don't believe a commissioner can be a nice guy, but I think Jimmy O'Neill will give us that.
So
he's a nice guy.
We're almost done. I'm going to let Captain Sia weigh in on this as well. But you and your colleagues really believe in community policing.
Yes,
you
we
think
do.
we're going to see a difference in
Yes,
that?
we do. And he's the author of it, and
That's what
we
I mean,
are in
yeah.
almost 30 commands now. All of my commands have NCO. I work with the sergeant. I work with all of my NCO officers. It's a great program. It's consistent officers that are off of patrol, and their job is to engage residents.
Got it. Okay. They're all waving at me that we got to go,
Okay,
but I
Gary,
really want to get an answer.
I
What
think-
do you think of the new PC?
I think that's going to be his legacy. He's going to build on the community policing and repair that relationship.
And maybe
Absolutely.
then some of the other issues we talked about won't be as
Right.
relevant.
Not
and prevalent.
perfect, but we're doing really good in
Right.
terms of crime in the Bronx. We're at historic lows. The fact that we've hired more cops, the technology, the training, the NCOs, the community partnership program. There's just so much the department has done under this
All right.
administration.
They're going to turn us off in a second. Councilmember Gibson, thank you. Professor and NYPD Captain Tom Sia, thank you.
My pleasure, Gary.
And folks, if you have further comments or questions on anything you heard on tonight's show or anything going on in the Bronx, email them to us at bronxtalk@bronxnet.org or put them on our Facebook page, and we'll read them on the air during a future edition of our program. We ask you to like Bronx Talk on Facebook, and you can check out our archives at bronxnet.org. You'll find Bronx Talk on the lower right navigation bar. We thank our producer, Jayla Jubetis, and also the director is Michael Leone. And guess what? We'll see you next week.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.